Welcome, everybody, to our July 27th City Commission meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. It's so nice to see so many people in here. Nobody has to sit outside, right? When we have a crowded meeting, isn't that nice? Yay! So happy to have that and happy to have enough space for everyone because having public involvement is always so important to us. So we'll start with our invocation and pledge of allegiance. Hillary, will you lead us in that, please?
May we all work together diligently this evening and always to share this fine city's beautiful outdoor public spaces in harmony. And as some of us squeeze the most fun out of the last days of our summer, let us keep Dunedin's hardworking, dedicated educators in our hearts and on our minds as they head back to their inspiring classrooms next week. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Hillary. All right, so tonight we don't have any presentations, which is surprising, but we don't. But we do have citizen input, and just so you know, this is citizen input for anyone wishing to speak on a topic that is not on the agenda. If it's on the agenda, you'll get a chance to speak to it at that time when we have it. And I think there are a number of people here for the Sterling Park, so if you haven't filled out a card, please do. Where are they, Rebecca? Okay. So is there anybody here wishing to speak on any item that's not already on the agenda? Not even you, Vinny? I'm looking at you. I mean, you're here.
It's historic preservation.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, we'll move on to action items. We have the first reading of Ordinance 23-12, amending Chapter 58, Pensions and Retirement, Firefighters Retirement System, and the Code of Ordinances for the City of Dunedin. This item has been recommended to be postponed until the August 17th Commission meeting. So can I have a motion to postpone?
So moved.
Okay, Vice Mayor Tornga and Commissioner Franey. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next, we have the second reading of Ordinance 23-03, Historic Landmark Designation for 559 Highland Avenue. Hillary, would you please read Ordinance 23-03 by title only?
Yes, Mayor. In Ordinance 23-03, an ordinance of the City of Dunedin, Florida, designated the structure located at 559 Highland Avenue as a local historic landmark and providing for an effective date. This has been the reading of Ordinance 23-03 by title only.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, Commissioner Walker and Vice Mayor Tornga, thank you. Welcome, Francis.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Frances Leong Sharp, Planner 2 for the City of Dunedin. Once again, we're here for the presentation of the second reading of Ordinance 23-03 regarding the historic landmark for the property at 559 Highland. As many of you are aware, based on my first readings presentation, this property was once a home to one of our former mayors, Mayor A.J. Grant. And I do have my presentation slides here, but I kind of figured that since this is a second reading, if you like me to go through the presentation, I could do so. But once again, there's no further changes to the ordinance, and
Well, can you at least show the picture of the property? So, I mean, you don't have to go through the whole presentation, I don't think, but I think for all the folks that are here that weren't watching last week or last meeting when we talked about it, it would be nice to see the pictures.
And Francis, if you could also just read the background, maybe.
yeah, sure thing. So, So I'll pull this slide up here. So this is the image of the property, and there is our portrait of our former mayor, Mayor Alfred J. Grant. And Mayor Grant has done a lot of significant contributions. So, I apologize.
That's okay. I mean, that's enough. You're showing
Yeah.
us a picture of the property and,
So just to recap, Mayor Grant had essentially the Toronto Blue Jays Stadium, or the minor league stadium that we have on Douglas, was named after him due to the fact that he made a significant contribution to that site, where he had worked to get funding to build that field. And one of the things that he also had done with his contribution with the city is that he's also have been a commission, and not only the mayor, but also a commission of Dunedin at that time.
yep, his picture's right on the back of the wall.
And once again, staff recommends approval of the second reading of the ordinance and adoption for the historic landmark at the property at 559 Highland Avenue. We do have our owner present here. And then we
Welcome.
also have a member from the Historic Preservation Advisory Committee here as well. And once again, the Historic Preservation Advisory Committee also recommended approval for the designation. So we are open for any questions that you may have.
Okay, any questions? Okay, anybody from Historic Preservation want to speak? Would the owners like to come up and say anything? And you live in Dunedin? We'll beat it out of you.
I follow all of you,
Yeah,
so I just want
it
to
won't
say
last
thank
long.
you, Francis, for everything that you've done, and Vinny is actually the one I first went to because I found the original blueprints to the house when I purchased the house, and I wanted to donate them to the city. And then
That's
I
awesome.
found out more about Mr. Grant, and everything just kind of fell into place. But I want to say thank you, Francis, for everything that you've done, and I want to thank all of you. I wish Mr. Grant were here. So this is exciting. Thank you.
We, as a community and as our commission, really thank you so much for joining our program to save our historic structures. This is so important, you know. Everybody is always looking to the future, but we spend, you know, you can't know what your future is unless you look in the past and preserve it and learn from it. So we really appreciate your efforts to do that because, you know, you're taking on certain criteria there and promising to keep things a certain way, and sometimes that's not always convenient. So we do really appreciate your effort.
Yeah, it's been a great house, and
It's adorable.
just love it.
yeah,
She calls it. She calls my house the grandma house. You're going to really leave those awnings? Yes.
But you know, it's funny because I lived in on Victor Drive, which is Radio City here in Dunedin. That's where I grew up, which is over across from Save-A-Lot, that neighborhood across the street there. And every house in that neighborhood had those awnings, including mine. I mean, it was a thing when your house was built in the 50s and the 60s.
Yes.
Everybody had those awnings. Not that they would help you in a hurricane, but
Well,
they sure were cute. But
I
it's
just love
adorable
them.
now. Everybody hated them 20 years ago, but now they're just kind of adorable.
Well, I love everything about the house, and you all are more than welcome to come by, and hopefully someday I can get into the little home parade thing with Vinny. I'd love that.
Yeah, do that.
Because I haven't made changes in the house except for the bathrooms. The kitchen's original. I've kept everything
That's adorable, though.
the way I could.
So thank you so much for doing that.
well, thank
Really
you.
appreciate it. Thanks for choosing Dunedin.
Thank you all very much.
Thank
I've
you.
been in Dunedin 1985. I've been
Oh,
here a long
okay.
time.
Well, thanks for staying.
Thank you. I mean, and I'm here to stay.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Vinny, did you want to come up and say anything?
No, Francis is in charge.
Okay. All right. All right, back to the commission. We have a motion and a second. So Commissioner Walker, any final comments?
No, I just want to thank you for your contribution to this city. The preservation of our historic structures, our neighborhoods, is so important to the fabric of this community, so thank you.
And Vice Mayor Torga.
I have nothing further. Thank you.
Commissioner Gao?
Thank you, Mayor. You know, it's just very interesting that we're going through a process of branding, and, you know, trying to find out what our brand is. And this is absolutely part of that. So just, for me, it's kind of serendipity that, you know, we're doing this tonight while we're going through this process. So thank you very much.
Commissioner Franny?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, actually, Jeff. I mean, the part of the branding is, it's all about telling your story of who we are. And I think this is just a fantastic example of who we are, preserving history and our charm, making it matter. But it takes dedicated, committed citizens to do it. We can't sit up here and do it. We can set policy to try to do it, but it takes people like you to do it. Thank you.
Okay, anybody from the public want to come forward and speak to this item besides this great group? Okay, roll call vote, please. Rebecca?
Commissioner Franny.
Aye.
Commissioner Gao.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Torga.
Aye.
Commissioner Walker.
Aye.
Mayor Brzezowski.
Aye, and that motion passes unanimously. Thank you, congratulations. Thank you, Francis.
I do have.
Oh, yeah, you got to do the presentation.
So we do have a plaque for the designation, and on the plaque, it states Mayor A.J. Grant, 559 Highland Avenue, circa 1953.
All right, well, you got to come up. Francis, you got to come up. Make a thing. There's going to be pictures. Got to get pictures. Yeah, we'll stand up in the background.
I'm not as tall as Antonella, you know.
Yeah, where's Antonella when you need her?
I know. Okay, hang on. And this podium is in the way. I want to make sure I see everybody.
Well, we can get out of the way, too. We don't have to be in the picture.
Right, yeah, for the problem.
Move a little that way. That way, Francis. All right, that's better. Okay, gotcha, Ren. Okay, thank you. Congratulations.
You're welcome, thank you. Okay, and the item everybody's been waiting for. The Sterling Park improvements and new proposed pickleball courts location. So we'll turn that over to Vincent Laney. Vincent Laney has a presentation to us. We've all studied it, I'm sure, but we'll ask our questions and then we'll open it up to the public. And then we'll take a vote for consensus direction moving forward. Okay?
Thank you, Mayor, City Commissioners, Vice Mayor. This evening, Lainey Sheets and myself, I'm Vince Gizzi, Parks and Recreation Director. Lainey Sheets is our Administration Superintendent for the Parks and Recreation Department. But before we get started, I really want to thank all the people in this audience tonight. They hung in there with us for several months as we were trying to work through all of our information. They've been very patient with us, lots of conversation with lots of people, including people in this room. So I just really wanted to say thank you all for being here tonight and hanging in there with us, and hopefully we're making the right recommendation, and I feel we are, and recommendations to our City Commission this evening. So let's begin.
Okay.
Our agenda today will include the following topics. We will review the community input process from Sterling Park. We will briefly review the inventory of veteran monuments, plaques, and memorials throughout the city, as well as the U.S. Military Veterans Advisory Committee recommendation based on input for a Veterans Park. We will discuss the proposal or the proposed near-term improvements to Sterling Park. We will be discussing requirements for pickleball courts and discuss possible locations as well as staff's recommendation. And lastly, we will open it up for questions and comments. First, let's take a look at the overview of Sterling Park. Now, I know a lot of people know where Sterling Park is, but for those who don't, The park is located on the northeast corner of Bayshore Boulevard and Palm Boulevard. The site is approximately 24 acres in size. This park was purchased by the City of Dunedin in 2003, and it must remain recreation or open space, public recreation or open space. The property was operated as a par 3 golf course until 2020, when it was converted into a city park. The park is divided into 2 separate parcels. There is a northern parcel along the Pinellas Trail and a southern parcel which contains the largest area. The 2 parcels are separated by Dunedin Golf Club and Curlew Creek. The northern parcel is approximately 2.5 acres. It is a passive park with trees, benches, and viewing of Curlew Creek. The only way to access the park, however, is from the Pinellas Trail. Unfortunately, due to its location, there is no vehicular access, nor is it feasible to add access, as it would require cars to cross the Pinellas Trail. And we have confirmation from the county that that's not going to happen. The southern parcel is approximately 21 acres in size. The current activities and amenities at the park include a driving range, also provide golf instruction for adult and children and summer camp programming. There are also putting greens and sand traps to practice your short game. The driving range was recently upgraded with shade canopies and is very heavily utilized. And Chris Hoban is here, our athletic coordinator, who pretty much put this whole project together, and it really gets a lot of use. And we had a great summer camp teaching this summer.
I have to say, that's where my son learned
He learned
to play golf there, and he goes to play golf once a month at least with his dad.
Great.
Greatest thing ever.
And he probably was taught by Paul Sylvester.
He was. And you know what they miss is the Father's Day tournament that they used to have there.
Yes, I remember you talking about
Maybe we
that.
can bring that back to the club.
So great job, Chris. Thank you. To protect the park users, we also have a safety zone. This area provides a buffer to ensure everyone's safety, especially when you have 2 driving ranges going at the same time. The former cart paths were converted into walking trails that meander around the ponds. The remaining green space is approximately 5.5 acres in size. Lainey's going to talk for a few minutes, a few slides, on some of the community involvement process that we've gone through.
Yes, good evening. We held a community meeting on January the 4th, 2023, this year, at the Hale Senior Activity Center. At that time, the staff presented an overview of the Sterling Park, similar to what you just saw, but with a little more detail. And we spoke about the configuration of the parcels, the space constraints, and the current activities at the park. We also discussed the current needs for different parks and recreation amenities that we have within the city of Dunedin, and including the pickleball courts and a need for a dedicated dog park. We discussed one option for a park layout at the meeting, and we had over 200 people at the meeting in the Hale Center. But in addition, the PowerPoint presentation was available on the city's website for anybody who was unable to attend in person. We then subsequently solicited the community input through a simple survey. We had over 1,200 responses to that survey, as well as dozens of emails. And the summary of that survey and the complete detail of that survey, so every response verbatim, was posted on the city's website. We also included the summary of that survey in your packet as well. We also did extensive outreach to the public to let them know about tonight's meeting as the follow-up discussion for that topic. Anybody who attended the meeting in January, we sent them an email communication if they provided their email to us, and I was able to read it. Some of them not so much, but we tried our best to work through that to get notice to everybody as best as possible. We also sent notices to the participants in our both tennis and pickleball programs as this affects them. So we reached out to them. And then lastly, we worked with our communications department. We established an Engage platform, so that community Engage platform that we have, it's a great tool that we are able to put on our website that puts a lot of information in one place. So residents, if they go to our website, they can get all the information on one page. And we also worked with them to promote tonight's meeting on our city e-news and our various social platforms. So the survey that we did back in January and through February basically asked 2 questions, and this is just a quick snapshot of what the responses were. So our first question was whether or not they supported pickleball courts specifically at Sterling Park. Of the responses, 56% said yes, 44% said no. And a common open response to the reason for no was that they wanted pickleball courts, but just in a different location. The second question was whether or not they supported a dog park at Sterling Park. That one was 47% yes, 53% no. And we had another common thing amongst the no responses in their free response was that of 116 of those, just simply felt like the city didn't need a dog park at all. So it wasn't about so much, and of those 116, about the location, but just the aspect of having a dog park. Additionally, we had a large group of residents that are in that surrounding neighborhood that also submitted a proposal to the city of Dunedin requesting that the Sterling Park be converted into a veterans and stormwater park. As a result of that conversation, initiation regarding the creation of a veterans park, both the commission and the Veterans Advisory Committee asked us to compile a complete inventory of our existing veterans dedications, plaques, monuments that are located throughout the city of Dunedin. This is just a map of all of those locations and a list of the 13 different areas that we have various amenities throughout the city, and it shows that how they are dispersed from north to south. We reviewed this complete list with the Veterans Advisory Committee. We've also completed the complete inventory in that PowerPoint in your packet as well. We did not intend to go through that tonight, but we do have that information if you have questions. So we did hear back from the Veterans Advisory Committee. They listened to the recommendations from the neighborhood groups with their recommendation to transform Sterling Park into a veterans and stormwater park. The committee evaluated the recommendations. They also went through the complete inventory of the current veteran monuments. And ultimately, the committee had one recommendation, and that was to possibly rename Sterling Park into Donald Roebling Veterans Park. And the significance of that is that Donald Roebling was the designer of the Alligator, the amphibious vehicle that was launched in the approximate area of Sterling Park.
Thank you, Lainey. So moving forward, staff took time to evaluate all input, as Lainey mentioned, including the notes from the January 4th meeting, survey results, emails, phone calls, in-person visits, committee suggestions, and comments at our city commission meetings. We looked at everything over the last several months. We also analyzed our park inventory to compare our active versus our passive acreage. Just a side note, we have over 350 acres of parkland, which does not include the causeway, which is owned by the county, but maintained and regulated by the city. So this is really important because I just want to make the point that over 2/3 of our park inventory is green or open space. 271 acres are passive, 77%, and 80 acres are active, 23% of our 350 acres. And again, those passive areas are parks such as Hammock Park, Gladys Douglas Preserve, Weaver Park, Amberley, John Grant Hubbard Linear Park, and several of our waterfront parks. Again, this is important because a lot of conversations had come up through the meetings about protecting our open space and our green space. So I just wanted to point out to the people in the audience and to the City Commission that we do value our open and green space. Not everything has to be active, but in our inventory, we feel that there is a shortage of active parkland. We also reevaluated all properties for pickleball courts and dog park amenities. We considered all factors, including space needs, parking, and current activities. So again, continuing to move forward, staff is recommending for the Sterling Park improvements, first, the near-term or short-term improvements, that we are improvements to the trails, and this again is short-term, and adding benches, working with stormwater and sustainability coordinators. I know Michelle Monteclaro is here this evening, also our city arborist, possibly adding native plants, aquatic plants, educational signage. We have $20,000 in our fiscal year 24 budget, and a lot of this work we can do ourselves with our parks staff and some of our other departments. So we do have some money for just keeping it passive without making any major improvements. Next would be the future improvements, which possibly stormwater elements to be determined. Again, Michelle could speak on that if anybody has any questions about stormwater parks, but there's nothing at this point that's budgeted. And moving forward, again, we would be looking at doing further community meetings to see what the community would also like to see in the 5 or 6 acres of Sterling Park. Lastly, we have not identified a location for an additional dog park at this time. We took the dog park funding out of our penny budget until we can find a more suitable location or possibly fund in a future year. Right now, we do have a partnership with Achieva Credit Union, so we do have our dog park that we partner with. We share in maintenance and we share in the operations of that park off Achieva Way. So I'm going to ask Lainey just to quick give you a brief on pickleball, the size, the dimensions, and then I'll take over and talk more about the recommendations.
Yes, so over the next few slides, we'll be discussing our search for a location for pickleball courts, for dedicated pickleball courts. And so as we go through that process, we'll be discussing the different space requirements that are needed for pickleball. So I just wanted to give you a brief overview of how pickleball courts land in space and dimensions in relation to tennis courts. So as you can see here, what you have on the screen, it just looks like a bunch of green and blue boxes. But that are 6 pickleball courts on top of 2 tennis courts. So they land in about approximately the same size, but they're not the same shape. So you can see the pickleball courts, 3 pickleball courts would be slightly narrower, but they would also be slightly longer in length. So in general, we can get them about the same locations, but they're not exact. So if there are things in that same area that are on the sides that we need more space, then that's where the challenges would come in.
So this evening, we are going to be making a recommendation for pickleball locations to repurpose one set of our tennis courts. Right now, we have 11 tennis courts. We have a set of tennis courts at Highlander Park. We have 4 courts. Presently, 2 of those courts do have pickleball lines on them and are used for pickleball, but you have to bring your own nets, so they're not dedicated courts, and they could be a dual use for both pickleball and tennis. We have 4 courts at Fisher, and we have 3 courts at Eagle Scout Park. Eagle Scout Park is located behind Fire Administration. Sterling Park is off the table for pickleball. And each of these locations that I mentioned on repurposing the tennis courts do come with advantages and challenges, which I'll just briefly go through. As I mentioned, both Highlander and Fisher courts are located at Highlander Park. Both courts come with parking challenges due to other amenities, which include, right now we have 2 sets of tennis courts, which equal 8 lit tennis courts. 7 Little League fields, walking trail. We have our pool, our spray ground. We also have several special events at Highlander Park, and our camps are based out of the park as well. At the Highlander courts, those are the 4 courts I mentioned that have also temporary pickleball lines on them now. Due to the proximity of our future aquatic complex, if you can just point to it would be difficult to lengthen the courts to the north for regulation-sized pickleball courts. To the south, we would not work either due to the heavy tree canopy, as you can see in the slide. Parking would be a challenge due to all the activities, as I mentioned, including Little League Baseball, which we have fall and winter ball, existing tennis, summer camp drop-off and pickup, parking for Hammock Park, and our new aquatic complex. So when I mention regulation, right now on our courts with the temporary lines, the baseline of the pickleball court to the fence and the baseline from the pickleball court to the net is on one half of a court, tennis court. And those are, they're not regulation at this. This again is temporary. So from the baseline to the fence is only 7 feet. We need 10 feet. And if on the other side, from the baseline to the netting is 7 or 8 feet. Again, we need 10. So the courts, no matter which court we build on, are going to have to expand the courts. We're going to have to expand the lengths of the courts. The Fisher location would also be tight between the baseball and softball fields. Trees to the south would need to be removed. Trees to the north would need to be pruned. We have a maintenance and restroom building to the south of where those courts are now, which would make the space very, very tight. And again, it's parking. We have limited parking for the activities. It's a very active location in our parks. And again, I can't emphasize that we want to make sure if we build these, they're going to be built to regulation size. Eagle Scout Park presently includes 3 tennis courts. We have one of the 3 tennis courts do have pickleball lines on them. So we have 2 temporary pickleball courts. Again, not regulation. We do have restrooms there, community garden, and walking paths. So getting to our recommendation, staff recommendation, out of the 3 locations is Eagle Scout Park. And that's because presently we do have pickleball there. It's been there for 2 to 3 years on the 2 courts. We have tennis court lights or lighting of the courts that has existed for over 20 years. We have room for 8 to 10 pickleball courts with some renovation and of expansion, again, repurposing the existing courts. So tennis would not be there any longer. And again, we want to make sure that they're regulation play. And we have restrooms, we have sufficient parking, and again, repurposing 3 tennis courts at Eagle Scout versus 4 at Highlander or Fisher. So all in all, we would still have 8 pickleball courts remaining. And if we did 8 tennis courts remaining, and up to 8 to 10 pickleball. So city staff is recommending City Commission approval of near-term improvements to Sterling Park, including improvements to the trails, adding benches, and nature and aquatic planting. Staff is also recommending repurposing 3 tennis courts at Eagle Scout Park with 8 to 10 pickleball courts. And these recommendations were supported by the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee at our July 19th, 2023 Parks and Recreation Advisory meeting. So with that, we can answer any questions.
Okay. Just a couple of housekeeping things that I know that you didn't mention, but for the benefit of the entire commission. Jennifer, on the stormwater piece, we are doing a stormwater rate study that's to include an actual stormwater project there, correct?
Yes, we have included that in the requested proposal for the rate study.
And that's because there's still, even though we've done, I want to say it's about $5 or $6 million of stormwater work in that general area, there's still a project that can be done utilizing Sterling to manipulate the runoff and all of that.
That's correct.
Okay, so we're actually doing a rate study for that, and we're pricing it out. We're pricing out the project or
That's correct.
whatever. So while it's not in the budget, it's kind of in its process. I think that's important for everybody to know.
It is.
Okay. That was it. That's what I wanted to just make sure everybody knew about that. Okay. I'll start this direction. Commissioner Franny, any questions?
Vince, it would be my understanding is that the two tennis courts at Highlander would still remain striped for pickleball, at least for now.
Yes.
Till things we see how things go.
Yes, our thought process would be let and see what happens once pickleball gets built, and we can consider either.
And you're making this recommendation now, understanding the ground surface over there at Eagle Park and the difficulties with that, but you guys have worked that through and you feel comfortable with it?
Yes, we are. The plan that we had probably about a year ago, was to build additional pickleball courts there. But based on the geotech results, it was going to be extremely expensive to put the geotech membrane and fill it all in so the courts wouldn't settle and sink. So we went back to the drawing board and started doing a process to looking at other locations. So the courts are going to be on the same surface with expanded areas. And I've met with Bruce Worth, our city engineer, walked and talked through it, and we feel comfortable that we can do that.
Good, thank you. That's really all the questions I have right now.
Okay. Commissioner Walker?
Thank you, Mayor. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the near-term improvements to the trails there in Sterling Park?
What we're looking at doing is we have millings now, and they are rough. And we could either do the concrete, what's it called? I'm sorry, the crushed concrete as we have at the GDP, similar surface, which would be a surface that we could roll, wheelchairs could go on, people with disabilities. That would be our suggestion for the trails. And we could also go to asphalt, but my concern there is pending what those further improvements are going to be. I'm not recommending using asphalt. So it would be similar to what's at the GDP, the crushed concrete, which is recycled concrete.
Yeah, I think that's important because a lot of the comments that we got back from the residents in the community were the trail's rough at this point. So I think whatever we do, we need to be focused on making sure that it's accessible by everybody. So
Yes.
Yeah.
And we can do a lot of that work in-house.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Vice Mayor?
Thank you for the presentation. Are we assuming that there's going to be a financial part of this presentation, or is this kind of go together with what's been presented already regarding the pickleball, additional courts, or?
Yeah, the financial piece of the pickleball, we do have $700,000 in our budget. We got estimates that were a little over $600,000, but we're looking at doing this as a design build, so we'll be putting concepts out there to people that build tennis courts and pickleball courts, and they would be giving us their best recommendations. But we feel we have sufficient amount of funds. And also, as far as Sterling goes, we have $20,000 in the budget just for park amenities for that location. So, and some of that work, most of that work could probably be done in-house as well. So we feel that there's sufficient amount of funds there too.
Thank you for that consideration. And I assume then we know that we had some issues, as mentioned previous, with the ground at the one particular park, but that seems to that seems to be fine within that budget concept. So we'll just assume that the budget part of it's already been taken care of in our previous conversations, and we'll see that again on the 15th, I would guess. Is that correct?
The 15th?
August.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I think we asked the city manager that question.
yeah. So on August 15th, you'll see the entire draft budget again, and the pickleball is incorporated within that draft budget. You saw it through both of your workshops as well. We won't be concentrating on the line item budget at that point. We'll be talking about some other items that have been kind of in the queue for city commission discussion, but it is in the budget. You have seen it, and it was just a matter of the location.
Thank you. Regarding the recommendation, you've made some thoughts about how you think this should go. Do you want us to give you questions about that, or should we later give comments? Do you suppose would be best?
Right now it's questions, because then we're going to hear from the public first before we make any final determination.
I'm not talking about final determination. I'm talking, well, anyway. So I'll do that later in the comments, then, I guess.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gao?
Thank you, Mayor. All my questions have been asked and answered, so thank you.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions, and I did mention this to Jennifer, so hopefully you told Vince about it or remembered to tell Vince about it. If not, you probably already know this answer, you and maybe Chris. What's the national standard or this Florida standard for the number of tennis courts versus pickleball for a city our size?
Yeah, I'm going to let Lainey answer that question.
I'm sure she knows too, the data wonk that she is.
We did a strategic plan back in.
Right. I'm just trying to understand, and it does have to be shown in conjunction, tennis courts versus pickleball, because there are, some people that are strictly tennis enthusiasts and purists, and some have transitioned for any number of reasons that I'm not going to speculate on. But, so you have to look at it together.
Absolutely. Yes. So back in the late 90s, on a national level, both with the state associations and the National Recreation and Park Association, they started to and put out a number of different level of service standards for communities, saying that you should have one of this for every 10,000 people that you have. And they created those different standards in the late 90s for how many different tennis courts you should have. Pickleball was not on the radar.
Right. And that was ended up meaning we needed 11 or something, right?
Right, so I'll explain how that has transitioned over time. Where we're at now is that the National Recreation and Park Association, NRPA, has specifically come out and said that they will not, and they can no longer put out level of service standards for recreational amenities, that you cannot compare what one community needs versus another. So what they do provide, though, is a lot of data on what other communities, what they currently have, what they're building, et cetera. So when we did our strategic plan back in 2014, we recognized it even at that time that there were no standards anymore for level of service that we could cite. But what we were able to do was get a lot of data on what averages were of level of service averages around the state of Florida for communities our size. So we took all of that data together and then also put in together, we knew our standards for Dunedin needed to be unique to Dunedin, because we might have different needs in our community for different activities, whether that be water access or how many boat ramps, those types of things. So the consultant also took into account all the community input that they got. And from there, yes, we created a Dunedin-specific level of service standard at that time. At that time, what it said was there was a recommendation that we should have about 9 tennis courts for our community. We have currently still 11. So at that time as well, the word pickleball, that was 9 years ago, literally didn't exist. It did not come up in, there are statewide reports that get done every few years that talk about all these different recreational amenities. It wasn't until the statewide report for the state of Florida, they have a report called SCORP, that goes into a lot of detail across the state of Florida. It wasn't until their 2019 report that they put a little blurb in the bottom saying, hey, by the way, pickleball is exploding. So we are still waiting for their
They
2023.
came late to the party.
Yes, so we're still waiting for their 2023 report. That has been submitted, and it's in its draft forms, but I have not seen it yet. What we do have is data from the National Recreation and Park Association for communities our size around the country. On average, a community of about 36,000 currently has 6 tennis courts and 4 pickleball courts dedicated. So again, we don't have standards to look to, but we can look at statistics and what I would imagine that if you looked back 3 or 4 years ago, you would probably see that pickleball court to be much lower because communities are just now getting around to, like we are, having the funds to be able to actually build them. So although it's 4 now, we expect it to probably double in the next few
Well, I
years.
appreciate you having that, and the reason I ask is because I feel, whenever you take something away, you can have concerns expressed. And so when you make those kinds of decisions, which are sometimes hard, you want to base it on data. And so I feel like it's important. It's not just, because people have asked for it. It's based on data. Every city around us is exploding. We've got Oldsmar's doing, 10 of them that are covered. Something like that. So anyway, okay, I appreciate that, and you'll be sure to look at the 23 report when it does come out, and just make sure we're staying up with where we should be. And, I think it's important if we meet the national standards, we can blow them away too. That's okay. We just shouldn't be under them, which is important. Okay. All right. Okay, so before we move to motions or discussion or anything like that, I'll open it up to the public. I do have cards that people have turned in, so I'll just call your name. You'll have 3 minutes. Give us your name and address for the record. The clock's right up there. So if I butcher your name, it's because I can't read your handwriting. But you couldn't read mine either, so no complaint. Okay, Bob, I think it's Russ? Ruse? Bus? 749 Vine. Does that say anything, Bob?
Kellis.
Come up to the podium.
I passed.
Okay.
Had all my questions answered.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Vincent Lucido, come on down to the podium. Give us your name and address for the record. Well, you don't have to do that because I already got it.
Vincent Lucido, 2050 South Point Drive, Dunedin. My first question is, you were talking about Sterling Park, and it looked like you were going to build them there, but then you just passed by it and said they weren't going to be built there, but I didn't understand why.
Okay, so
'Cause it was
I'll tell you
56%
what we'll
to build
do
them
is,
there,
if
yeah.
you have any questions, put them out there, we'll write them down, and at the
Okay.
end, we'll answer them all, because we don't generally do the back and forth.
Okay,
So is
cool.
that your
That's
big
cool.
question?
I
Is
have
why
another-
aren't they being built there?
Right, but I also
Okay.
have a
All right, we'll answer that at the end, once we get everybody's stuff. Any other opinions you want to share with us?
Yeah, my concern is that we don't need less tennis courts just because they need pickleball courts.
No, I get
So
it, yeah.
when you're out there playing, like in the wintertime especially, there are people who can't play tennis because the pickleball players are out there. So that's why I was a little concerned if you're not building them in Sterling Park, then you're taking away courts that we need. So
Gotcha.
that was just my main concern.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that. Okay. All right, next is Jessica Rains. Come on down.
Good evening.
Good evening.
First, I want to thank the mayor, the vice mayor, city commissioners, and the city manager for continually adding to the quality of life here in Dunedin. Being outside is a big reason that people move to Florida, and the amenities that are available to residents in Dunedin makes it a particularly special place to live. As you have heard over the last few years, pickleball is the fastest growing sport in America. I'm happy to see you're all very aware of that.
Yes, we are.
This growth can be I'm short, sorry.
Yeah. Look at me, too. I mean, she's shorter than me, but I'm pretty short, too.
This growth can be attributed to the ease of learning the sport and to the fact that the whole family can easily play. We have recently added an amazing young man as the youth advisor to the Parks and Recreations Advisory Board because I met this young man playing pickleball. I met him on the courts, saw the opening that we had for a youth member on the board, got to know him, and he's now joined the Parks and Recs board. Jake also plays for his school team. He's in the #1 position on his school team. And now his 11-year-old brother, Jake just turned 15. His 11-year-old brother is now joining the players at Highlander until school starts again. So definitely, I know the impression is that this is a sport for elderly people. That's not true. We definitely have a need here in Dunedin and frankly throughout Pinellas County for access to more permanent courts. The lines on the tennis courts were a wonderful first step, but required players to buy and carry nets back and forth to the courts. It limits people's ability to just go play. If I want to go play tennis, I just need my racket and a ball and I can show up at the courts. That's not true with pickleball yet. Parks and Recreation under Vince Gizzi's direction has done the research and laid out courts that will be a real asset to the city. You may be aware of the fact that pickleball is a particularly social sport, so it will bring people into Dunedin who will most likely also enjoy many of the restaurants and bars that we have downtown. Again, I just want to say thank you for all your consideration for these pickleball courts. We're very hopeful.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. Okay, I love the enthusiasm, but what we try to do is not do the clapping. So if somebody doesn't agree with you, they don't feel overwhelmed or overpowered by people who do. So thank you for that. Okay, next, Robbie Welpley?
Roby.
Roby.
I'm going to defer to the others, because they might not be others, but I just want to say how positive I am in the direction that we've taken. And there's no way in 3 minutes I can explain why pickleball should not be built at Sterling Park.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Larry Gerson. Long time no see. Welcome.
Thank you. I have some people from my committee. Larry Gerson, 1310 Overcast Drive, Dunedin, Florida. I just, FYI, I'm also sit on the Dunedin Veterans Committee, but I'm not here representing them. I'm here representing the Stormwater Advisory Committee. I'm the chair now. I've been appointed. So
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. On Tuesday, January 10th, 23, the Stormwater Advisory Committee discussed the proposed Sterling Park master plan by the Parks and Recreation Department. The proposed plan included 2.5-acre dog park and pickleball courts. When the par 3 Sterling Golf Course was closed and the site became Sterling Park, it was suggested to our committee that this would be an ideal site for a stormwater education park. The reasoning was that the site already had 3 stormwater ponds. It becomes flooded and saturated after rain events, and its proximity to Curlew Creek helps reduce stormwater runoff, controlling flooding and reduce pollution prior to entering the creek. A major concern with the proposed dog park is pet waste. A high traffic and repeat dog park visits can lead to a lot of dog waste deposits within the dog park. Dog waste is considered a stormwater pollutant. Dog waste that is not picked up can wash off into our waterways and provides bacteria, nutrients, pollutants that may cause algae blooms and fish kills or be a potential concern for human health. The proposed dog park for Sterling Park is in close proximity to the 3 stormwater park ponds on the park property. Our concern is the potential for pet waste to pollute these stormwater ponds, which are home to an array of wildlife, especially great diversity of birds. The idea of a stormwater education park is that it combines green infrastructure and parks for stormwater management, stormwater education, and is also a park with abundance of green space for the public to enjoy. There is a concern for pickleball courts due to the construction of a large amount of hardened and impervious surface area, which will reduce the potential for stormwater infiltration into the ground. This would be inconsistent with the implementation of the stormwater education park. And the park needs to be improved with safe walking paths that are ADA compliant, benches, and perhaps a picnic area. The stormwater education portion of the park may include, but is not limited to, educational signage along the paths to better inform the public on the importance of stormwater runoff control and signage explaining the various stormwater treatment and control methods. These examples may include rain guards, vegetated swales, infiltration basins, permeable pavements, and native vegetation around 3 stormwater ponds. So the stormwater meeting came together, the advisor, and we passed unanimously for this. I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, and thank you for all your hard work. Appreciate it. Okay. Nope. Okay. Be nice over there, John. I'm just teasing you. Okay. Next, we have Justin Spinello. Come on down.
Good evening, how are you?
Good evening, welcome.
Thanks for having me. I actually didn't really intend to speak this evening, but the lovely lady at the front desk asked if I wanted to, and I figured, you know what, what's 3 minutes? But Justin Spinello, 1420 San Mateo Drive. But I don't come to you tonight as a resident, I actually come to you as the president of the Dunedin Kiwanis Club. And just for a quick synopsis for everybody, I know we all know what the Kiwanis are and where the Sterling Park is, but just like Vince did a quick recap, I'll do the same. If you were ever in Key Club in high school, for a brief moment in time, you were a Kiwani. And basically, our commitment is as a charity to support the community and its youth. So we have a Key Club equivalent for all the different echelons of school, so elementary, middle. We also support other charities in the area, such as Kimberly Home, the Dunedin Food Pantry, Gigi Rodriguez, House of Mercy and Encouragement, the whole 9 yards. What this particular community might be best aware of us would be the Kiwanis Spray Ground, which, Vince, I gotta tell you, you gotta say Kiwanis Spray Ground. When you say Spray Ground without the Kiwanis, it cuts me deep. But for the most part, we're one of the oldest charitable organizations in the country, and we were established here in 1959. And with projects like the Spray Ground or the Kiwanis Pocket Park off of San Salvador, where you can take your dog or your pickleball gear and watch a sunset, or the Kiwanis Fit Zone over at Weaver Park, or even the ADA-focused Boundless Playground over by the community center. We, about 4 years ago, started focusing on another project for you all. And obviously there's huge concerns, right? A free gift is one thing, but then there's maintenance, there's upkeep, there's insurance and liability. I know we have a lot going on. When I look at that map, I see all the different things we've discussed tonight. There's been concerns about disability, access, trails, water runoff. I'm a veteran, so I can say Veteran Park, love the idea, but let's be reasonable, who's gonna argue against the Veteran Park? And I've even reached out. We're actually apropos to support that type of project as well. But we do have over 1,000 man-hours into a particular project that I just feel I just want to throw out there so that everybody's aware, because I'm not 100% sure everyone knows. Some of you, I look in the eye and you may remember me. We've had conversations on and off. But for the most part, the latest project we've put into play is an archery center that could be possibly Olympic certified and host national tournaments. Not only would this possibly be a revenue generator for the town, but it's free to build. We have a co-op partnership with another charitable organization that there's a grant process. It's pretty straightforward. I realize I'm running out of time, but basically,
I was just going to tell you might want to wrap up, Justin.
It's a partnership where they would offer us all sorts of support, to include also the fact that this would be free for the town ongoing. There's a grant process between the Pitt and Robinson Act and a handful of other Florida grants that would provide the funding that would support it year-round. You could also do a command and control with the Parks and Recreation Department, so that way you have some semblance of upkeep for hiring people to maintain it. It keeps the place green. When I look around the map and I see all those residents, it keeps it quiet. It's a quiet sport. It's multi-generational. The youth are doing it. It's a growing sport as well. Then you already have your safety zone buffer built in for the area that we're looking at. You have
Justin,
a
I'm going
pro
to have to
shop.
cut you off,
Yep,
because
that's
then
fine.
I have
No
to let
problem.
everybody else speak as long as you.
I get it. No problem at all.
We appreciate
I
your interest.
appreciate your time.
I know you're working with, I
And,
know you've been talking
Can I do one
events.
quick plug? We meet every Thursday at 7:30 on the backside of Marguerite's Cafe. And we also do a second Wednesday of every month someplace in town.
All right, there you go, buddy.
Follow us on Facebook.
Thank you. Okay, Dan Breegen? Am I saying that correctly? I'm surprised, but go ahead. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I want to thank the commission, the Parks and Recreation Department, and all of the subcommittees that we visited. It just shows that this process has worked the way it's supposed to work. Thank you. I want to plant a seed, if I can, about the veterans or the War Memorial Park, and maybe suggest something. When we think about a park like that, it's a big item. It's a big picture item. It's kind of a sparkler is going off in your head. Where do you start thinking about it, and how do you design it? How do you think about it? How do you finance it? Would it be possible perhaps to offer an exploratory committee to study this issue and make recommendations on how this park might look, how it might be financed, where the funds might come from, how do organizations like this generate private donations, corporate donations, all of the questions that you have in order to make something like this happen, and then present it to the Parks and Recreation Department and the City Commission, so that we don't have to have all of our disparate ideas thinking about this thing, so that it doesn't come together in a finished recommendation. I would be happy to join such a committee, and I'm sure there's other people in the area that would like to have a stake in that project. The VFW, for instance, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, for instance, and others that would like to be involved. Just a suggestion.
Thank you. Okay, Joe Berger. Come on down.
Try to keep it brief here.
All right, pickleball
got my
man.
shirt.
Shirt, I'm saying.
We're going to have some neon green ones. We're going to be all over town. It's going to be
Okay,
cold.
so we'll know who you are. You won't
Joe
be
Berger.
missed.
Yeah,
Welcome.
Windy Creek Drive. I represent 25 members of our group. We play at Eagle Scout Park, and we love that idea. That's the best location of all of them. The problem is we have so many members that we wait. We stand around and wait. For example, we'll bring our own nets and use the tennis court there where the lines are, and we play and be 16 of us. If somebody else is using the other one, we stand around where the other two tennis courts are just sitting there. So I guess what I'm suggesting is you paint the lines on the other two courts in the interim, and then, eventually, when you create the other courts, because I don't really know what the timeline's going to be. Is it a year, 2 years, whatever?
Okay, we'll find that out for you.
Just so we have enough. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, and last but not least, Kim Begay. Welcome. How you doing, Kim?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good, nice to
Good
see you.
evening. The City Hall is beautiful. First time here for me.
Thank you.
Anyway, I would just like to say thank you to the commissioners and the staff of the City of Dunedin for doing the right thing and taking the pickleball court proposed project off the table for the Sterling Park area. It was, just too much of a flood hazard, and there were so many things that were working against it. I really think the new proposed location is much better, and I think the idea of a Veterans Park is wonderful. We certainly need to recognize our soldiers who put their life on the line serving our country, and that's a wonderful way to show our appreciation. The other thing is I don't know why the aquatic vegetation was removed from the ponds at Sterling Park. I understand it had to do with a drainage issue, but in the process of doing that, a lot of the wading birds now have lost that very small amount of habitat, and it would be wonderful if we could get that appropriate aquatic vegetation restored so they could come back and forage there again. All of those ponds are little mini habitats, and the number one threat to our wading birds and all birds actually is habitat loss. So I know the residents that live right there behind the ponds are missing seeing all the spoonbills and other wading birds. So maybe that could be a feature that you could add back into the ponds, and it would be a wonderful place for wildlife watching. Because who doesn't like watching the beautiful spoonbills? So I just want to say thank you so much for all your hard work, and thank you for doing the right thing, and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Kim.
All right, thank you.
Okay, before I go back to the commission, anyone else that didn't fill out a card that wants to come forward and speak? Okay, come on down. Give us your name and address for the record.
Kathy Kalankowitz, 922 Gulfview Boulevard. I just want to thank Vince and everyone who put in time and effort for getting us some pickleball courts in Dunedin. I have an extensive background in tennis. It was my whole life. I was a coach, a teacher, a pro. I moved here right before COVID and picked up pickleball a couple years ago. I looked at all 3 locations as well and did pros and cons of each, and I agree with your recommendation, Vince. Just 2 comments. One, we need shade desperately out there because it's very hot and we play even when it's really hot. And I would really hope we could do 10 courts as compared to 8 because there's a need for that, but not at the risk of putting the courts so close together that you go for a wide ball and you're in someone else's court. So just please look at those 2 things. But thank you for all your hard work. It was not an easy decision, and I think under all the circumstances, it's the best location.
Thank you very much. Sir, give us your name and address for the record.
Mikowski, 1467 Hagen
Wait,
Avenue.
what'd you say your last name was?
Frank Mikowski.
Oh, I thought you said Bajolski. I was
No,
like,
but
I thought I was related to every
we're not-
Bajolski, you know?
we're not related,
Sorry.
but
I heard the
both
ski.
skis. I'll reiterate what I did at the last meeting was that for some reason this driving range is a sacred cow. I don't see why we need 2 driving ranges side by side. All the revenue that's generated by that driving range could go to the golf course in terms of a driving range and driving and lessons. Why are you siphoning off funds that would be available for a $4 million project? You could create the recreation center at the building that's existing there. You can use that parking lot. All the area that's green and dark green where the driving range is could be made into a rewilded area with natural paths. Could be mulch and dirt. The other area could be asphalted or for ADA type purposes. And we wouldn't be having two driving ranges next door to each other, which makes no sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thanks. Mike
Santa's
Lotto,
little helper.
right time of year, almost halfway.
Welcome.
Mike Lotto, Mediterranean Manners. Great idea, Sterling Park. I used to play a lot of tennis there. We actually stopped at night because of the light situation. There's 3 tennis courts and only 4 lights. So if you think about it, you're supposed to actually have 2 lights per court so you can see the ball at night. So I'm just not asking, because you're not allowed to do that right now, but commenting that we should get new lights there so you actually can use it. Can I ask if that's in the plan? Or?
Okay, I'll address that, but thank you
guys.
for sharing your concern. Anyone else? Okay, let's see if we can get some of this stuff taken care of. Okay, I'll look to you, since you're the decision maker on a couple of these things. I mean, I don't mean to ignore you over there for Parks and Rec, but, okay.
I might need their help, but.
And that's fine, I mean, but it should be your direction to do that. there was discussion about painting the lines on the other two courts and the timing of the pickleball courts and all of that. What do you think the timing of the pickleball courts likely is?
We're going to do this as, if it gets approved, it'll be a design build. And between the time it gets designed, out to bid, back, and built, we feel we can do it in under a year.
But that would start with the new budget?
Yes.
Which is, so it won't even go into design until October, or?
Yeah, so actually, I know it's a short amount of time between now and October 1st anyway, but we do have money in the current fiscal year budget, so we can actually get started with that process.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and in the meantime, is it unreasonable to say we could paint the lines on the other two courts until, I mean, I don't know the use, I'm not out there like you guys are.
I think that's a question that we'd like to maybe talk about with
Okay.
staff.
I'd like to, Mayor, if I may, find out, what the cost associated with that would be. And-
Yeah, so you've heard it, I just want to make sure, I mean, I'm not trying to get you to commit this second.
Right.
The other piece, obviously, will you take a look at the lights? You've heard that, and again, there's light pollution that has to be considered for the neighborhood that's behind it and around it.
We've discussed that.
So all of that, so at some point, you'll come back when you have your design recommendation, and you'll look at all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I can answer that. We are planning all new LED lights. There's lower poles. They focus directly on the courts. There's not a lot of spill with those type of lights. Right now, we have old telephone poles with just a few lights on them. So
I lived right in that neighborhood right behind there, which is the same one I mentioned
So-
earlier, and there's a little cut through to that neighborhood. The poles that were there when I was a kid, years and decades ago, are still the same poles that are there now.
So this would be all new lighting.
Okay, and then you don't have to answer this, but as you're doing this, you've heard the comment about shade.
Yes.
Yes, so
I
actually,
mean, shades is a huge thing.
it's part of the design, so that 10 feet that is in between, that is actually will be a shade canopied area with bench seating in the middle, so the people that are waiting
So it won't be
to play-
shaded over the
over the
court,
courts, but no, the waiting area will be
where you can
so-
get out of the sun for a little while.
Correct,
Okay.
yes. So there'll be plenty of shade out there for
And
those
you'll
who are
bring some
playing.
you'll bring something forward, we'll be able to see is what your best recommendations are for good standards. But I'm just wanted to make sure I know you did, but I want to make sure everybody heard those comments.
Yes.
Yeah, Mayor, we've done a lot of research on
I
this.
know you have, and I appreciate that.
And
We
we, not only, it's
appreciate
just
that.
not Laney and I, we've brought several pickleball experts that play quite a bit to work with us on this.
Right. And then there was a question about why aren't we building pickleball at Sterling? Well, you can see a lot of people in the room. The reason is that the neighborhood didn't want it. And so we're going to a place that we feel it's already got a similar use as far as noise and lighting for the surrounding neighborhood.
Parking,
restrooms. So we feel it's just more compatible for the neighborhood around Eagle Scout Park. So that's the reason why we're not doing it at Sterling. And then the aquatic vegetation on the ponds.
Yeah, that's,
Go right ahead.
I mentioned in the slides, we were looking at aquatic vegetation, and we also get help from stormwater and from our city arborist as well.
But we removed it for a reason. There was something going on that we had to remove it.
Yeah, it was.
It wasn't just done negligently, like
It was-
flippantly. There was a
yeah.
reason, and I don't remember what
Right.
it was, but there was a
Michelle,
reason.
can you speak to that? Our stormwater manager.
Welcome.
She's way smarter than anybody here on stormwater.
I mean, there was a reason we removed it. I just don't remember what it was.
So we removed it because it was impeding like the volume in the pond. We couldn't store any more stormwater in the
Right.
pond. So, but we can replant the pond to make it more native vegetation around. to
Have
attract
different
more-
vegetation is what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And then when we do our stormwater project, at some point in the next been here a long time, it'll probably take about 2 years before that to ever happen,
Right.
because it's a long process. But once that's done, then we'll see what the capacity is and can determine that kind of thing.
Correct.
Right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Thank you, I appreciate it. I just wanted to make sure, we didn't just willy-nilly go do that. And I mean, people kind of look at those things like, oh, that's a lake. Why are you messing with the lake? Well, it's not. It's a drainage pond. And so it's there to serve a purpose, and that's the number one purpose. Secondarily, if there's habitat there, that's great. But we're also in charge of making sure that that area doesn't flood, and there are a lot of housing in that area. So thank you, I appreciate that. There was a question about the 2 different driving ranges. I'm going to try to answer this, but kick in. So one driving range is just for anybody that wants to go hit a bucket of balls. That's our Sterling driving range.
Yes.
And not necessarily people that are going to play golf. The other driving range is part of the golf club, and that is for people who are warming up. They're not going to come to our regular driving range and stand in line and try to get a spot to warm up to play their game of golf.
Right. Either members or members for the day, or the guests for the day.
So that's why the 2 of them are there, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Mayor, can I add on?
Sure, and our resident golfer over here.
Resident really bad golfer. So having had many, many meetings with the club, as you know, in regards to the 2 driving ranges, we are putting $4.5 million into a Donald Ross renovation of that golf course. You cannot have a viable golf club or a renovated golf course and attract the number of rounds that you need without a dedicated driving range for that club itself. The city-owned driving range, which is the child of Chris Hoban over there, is doing an absolutely fantastic job with that driving range. Those bays are busy at the prime time. They're all taken up. And so it'd be very difficult to combine the 2. That said, in the future, I think we need to keep an eye on the prize here because the golf club driving range is really short. And they're looking to expand that somehow, either combining the 2 or figuring out some way to maximize the driving range in that area is not off the table at all. But for now, the club definitely needs their own dedicated driving range.
Okay. All right, so now we're going to come back to conversation. Let me just look at my colleagues. Do you guys want to take a quick break before we get into this, or do you want to just move forward?
I'm good.
You're good? You guys good?
Keep everybody
Just
waiting.
check, okay. All right, so we have 2 recommendations from our staff. One is, our first one is to move forward on a recommendation for near-term improvements to Sterling Park, and the second one is to move forward on the repurposing of the tennis courts to pickleball courts at Eagle Scout Park. So I guess what I'll do is try to hone the discussion on the first one, which is the improvements, the near-term improvements that were recommended to Sterling Park. Can I have a motion to approve that?
So moved. Second.
Okay.
Second.
Commissioner Franny and Commissioner Gao. Okay, Commissioner Franny.
So is this everything, our closing comments, our everything?
Well, this is for the Sterling Park recommendations. We're going to have another motion on the pickleball courts at Eagle Scout.
Okay, sure.
So you get to talk again.
Yeah.
Not that
So
you
this
need,
is-
not that you need to.
No, but that's what I was trying to say. If
Yeah.
it's all in one, I'm done. I'll make it all happen. But so this is strictly about the Sterling Park
Yes.
improvements, not about pickleball?
Right.
Okay. No, I totally agree. I think that, I love that we've gotten dog park and pickleball off the table. Quite frankly, I think behind the scenes, it's been off the table for a while. It was important to get the word out that it's off the table. And so, I think that right now we've got a lot of issues and tightness in the budget. I think what you're recommending for the park right now makes a lot of sense. And we just keep the discussion going about any kind of long-term things. But, so I'm in favor.
Okay, Commissioner Gao.
I'm in support of this as well. Well, I really, really, really love the discussion tonight. I love the resident involvement. And I think that this will not be the last time we'll have these discussions. We have limited land space and a very active residential community, and so things are going to pop up. But I just love the interaction, because this is the way things get done, and I really wish the branding folks could be here tonight to see why Dunedin is
Sue will
Dunedin.
make sure they watch it.
Please do, please do. But I'm in support. Wonderful.
Okay, Commissioner Walker.
Yes, I support it as well. And we are having some budget discussions here the middle of next month. And so I think it's important that we keep that in mind as we're going forward here. But I will say that I do believe in this particular instance, the process really did work. We've got input from the community, and we made some decisions based on that. I greatly appreciate the staff and all the diligence that they put into this. And probably most importantly, I really appreciate how the community really kind of came together around this particular issue. And at the end of the day, I think we're going to walk out of here with a really great solution. So anyway, thank you.
Okay, Vice Mayor Twarnga.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to make one point so I don't forget to do this, and that's about the driving range there. Both the Parks and Rec, the entire Parks and Rec Department, Chris and Paul Sylvester have, and particularly Paul Sylvester, running that for the kids for all of these years, as long as I can ever remember. So many kids went there to learn how to play golf. And Paul's just a fantastic person and has done such a wonderful job with our kids every year, has up to 200 people, 200 kids in the program, and it's just fantastic for us, in my opinion. I am very, very encouraged by an engaged community, by a communicating community, by a creative community, and by a community that stayed on top of what they thought was really important for us and got the information where it needed to be. I have been involved in this, having made a presentation from the dais here about this subject matter. And so I've had a lot of people talk to me about this. So I'm going to make a couple points just to make sure that I make them. First of all, let's just talk about a veterans park, if I may. And Dan, I loved what you said. Okay, that's just a great way of doing something. Some of the things that I have heard, now I'm a member of the VFW, I'm a member of the American Legion, but also very importantly to what I'm going to say is I'm a Vietnam veteran. But we're all that have served are veterans, okay? And I love the idea of this being a veterans park for all of our veterans and for all of those who we remember being veterans and for all of us who had family members that were veterans. And it doesn't matter where you served, you were a veteran, and I think it's highly held by the community here in Dunedin, a veteran. And so I applaud that, and I applaud us getting ideas from people. So, for example, someone mentioned to me, how about a Roebling Park? Now, for those of you who know, that would be very enticing to me. I searched long and hard for that LVT that's out in front of the VFW, and as a fact is secured. I had to use my American Express card. I love what Donald Roebling did. Most importantly, I love what the military did here. And that Veterans Park is sitting right on top of very active veterans, or shall I say military, organization that was able to provide a counterattack in World War II within 8 months after Pearl Harbor. And some of the people that were here in Dunedin were involved in that. Now, they got involved with that because of the Roebling, called then the Alligator, the LVT. And so, but the history is there, the airport, the landing spots where they worked with the LVTs. I would like this to go before some group like Dan, what Dan was talking about. It's just wonderful that the Veterans organization and committee that we have has taken a very strong position on this. I would love to see this be a veterans park and a stormwater park, perhaps even under the umbrella of the Sterling Park. I like to keep history. I think history is important. And I think we are reminded by history and we're drawn to things by history. And so I think we can achieve lots of different things. But the input that I received was what they would either ask me what I would name it, or they would tell me what they wanted to name it. But it really came down to the input that I got, and I'd like to see more of that, perhaps by a committee, that it really be referred to as, and I was very proud of that, as a Dunedin Veterans Park. Now, I don't know if some of you have been in veterans parks. Some of them are huge. They have Hueys in them. They have F4s in them. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a walking park as Vince presented. But we could build things in there, and we could have folks contribute money as long as there's a plan, and we could have little groups within that walking area that our children could and our children to come could have that observance and see just how Dunedin does treat their veterans and the history of where we came from. It's really interesting that park, and again, I'm gonna certainly support this. The park there, if you go down to the one end of the city, we start almost at the VFW. We come through in the middle and go to the American Legion, and then we almost end up at the other end at a veterans park. So just a great opportunity for the future for everybody to have some fun with. I'm strongly encouraged, by the way, for those of you in racket sports, I'll just make a comment that I was vice president of marketing and sales for head ski and tennis. And so we made pickleball rackets, we made tennis rackets, as you all know, so every kind of racket sport. So was actively involved in that. I did that in Europe as well. So I really appreciate the people that are standing up and want to be able to participate in that sport and want those courts here, and I certainly support that, and so I love the presentation that you made about that. I think that is also very, very fantastic. The stormwater is really important to me in a community. I think it's very close to one of our most important things, because obviously if the stormwater is over your property, you have real problems with regards to wastewater, and you'll eventually have problems with your potable or drinking water. So stormwater is important to the community, and we still have problems within the community, and I really want to support that very strongly. So I really like that recommendation as well. Putting it all together. I live on Curlew Creek. Curlew Creek comes right on down there, and there's Curlew Creek, one of our most fantastic creeks that we have in Dunedin, and we're supporting that. So I think that's something that I can certainly support. The sustainability is in each part of this project. Sustainability of Parks and Rec and their activities, sustainability of stormwater and the communications that are required for that. As well as in our golf and everything else that we do here. So I could go on. I love. Obviously, I can't help it.
I'm just teasing you.
So I'm with Honor Flight, as you know. So I support veterans. It's one of the big things that I do. So I am really, really pleased with the community's input to this, with the committee's input to this, the various committees, with the staff here. Thank you very much. Wow, what a great evening. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Tornga. I don't think I can follow that and say much else. I thought I did.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, well, I lost track.
I mean, there's not a whole lot more I can say, and I appreciate the process. all of the things that have been said, that we all support the need for our stormwater drainage projects that are going to be happening in the future there, and if there's can be education a part of it, for sure. You know, we're not deciding whether to name a park at this point, something different. We're not deciding whether to make it a Veterans Park at this point. You know, those decisions need to be made. I think one of the reasons we're going slower on some of the amenities on this park is because you can't forget about the 100 acres we just preserved at Gladys Douglas. We are not shy about preserving, and we have huge projects getting ready to get started over there, but we can't afford to pay for it all. So at this point, we probably, I think why they're not recommending huge improvements to this park at this point, or developing, even spending time on developing it, is because of that. We've got a good couple of years of really working hard with the county and other entities, environmental entities, to work on Gladys Douglas. So as long as there's safe trails here, and as long as that stormwater project happens over the next couple of years, and as long as we get over the hump with Gladys Douglas, I think then we can kind of come back to Sterling and say what else what needs to happen, or what other improvements. So, but I'm just glad we worked through it. I appreciated Jennifer's recommendation to announce on Tuesday, or whenever it was, hurry up and announce we're not recommending this, so that, you know, everybody could just relax. I thought that was a really smart move, and let everybody relax, and I really appreciate your thoughtfulness to do that. I think that's it. So let's do a roll call vote, please.
Vice Mayor Tornga.
Aye.
Commissioner Walker.
Aye.
Commissioner Gao.
Aye.
Commissioner Franny.
Aye.
Mayor Brzezowski.
Aye, that motion passes unanimously. And then one more, I need a motion.
So moved.
For,
Second.
the motion was to move forward with the pickleball courts at
Eagle Scout.
Eagle Scout. Okay, so Commissioner Gao and, okay, Commissioner Gao and Vice Mayor Tornga.
And I'm sorry, Mayor, I was just trying to be Commissioner Freeney.
Well,
As long as this gets done, we're
when
good.
I first got on as a commissioner, it used to be a race. You guys are really polite that you wait for me to at least ask for the motion. But back in the day, you couldn't even get it out. So that was just a reminiscing moment. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to repurpose the tennis courts to the pickleball. Any final comments? Commissioner Gao?
Yeah, just a shout out to the community. And this really is a textbook way of how government should be run. So thank you for your patience. You know, it is amazing to get the emails and the emails and the emails and the emails to the point of almost, oh God, seriously, really? But the emails were so polite and kind, and
Most of them.
Most
of them. I got a few that weren't.
Well,
I'm just saying. But it's
just
passion.
different degrees of passion, maybe.
It's called passion.
Right, different degrees of passion. And so just thank you all. Thank you all for just being a textbook example. When you see civic engagement in the dictionary, it's got a picture of Dunedin on it. So thank you very much.
Vice Mayor Tornga.
A large number of years ago, I lived in Boulder, Colorado,
I know.
and I became a runner.
Excuse me, Vice Mayor. We just had public comment on this, so we have now come back to the commission. I apologize for that, but we opened it up to public comment, and I think we had 10 or 12 speakers, so my apologies. Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
And so I became a runner, and the reason why I became a runner is, well, we would work until 6 o'clock, and we'd come out, and we couldn't get a tennis court. Here we are with a tennis company. And so we became runners, and because we couldn't get on the tennis court. And I respect the tennis players wanting to have the courts their very own. I respect that, I understand that. And having been in racket sports, I understand that. And I understand the same for pickleball. And I think Parks and Rec is just trying to make this happen, trying to accommodate everyone. So So I'm going to be supportive of this. I'm normally a purist on a number of sports, but I'm going to support this. I think it was a good decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Commissioner Franny?
Yeah, so again, I want to thank the whole room for their patience. I mean, the St. Andrews group as well as the pickleballers. Pickleballers been way patient. And so I'm very happy to support this motion today. I think it's a great motion. I think it's a great solution. We got the problem of the soil out of the way by a creative method. So I think it's good. So I want to thank everybody who's been a part of the process. The process has been great. It works the way it is supposed to. I especially want to thank Kathy Kay. I'm still not going to be able to say your last name, Kathy, but Kathy is an expert. She's got a PhD in sports management and an expert on tennis and pickleball, and she was an advisor and actually, by request of city manager, met with the city manager on pros and cons, and I think you landed up in a great spot, Vince, and I would advise that you might want to take advantage of the expert for the rest of the process, too. And I want to thank Vince, because, you know, when the process started, you picked the dog park and the pickleball as kind of the idea, and I think along the way, you worked hard to listen and to really try to do what you thought was right. And I just want to thank you, because I know you're in a hot seat. Nobody ever thinks Rec and Parks directors. They think, wow, that's such a fun job.
Hey, Sue, can you close those doors? Excuse me. Well, he's leaving, but I just want to...
But I just think it's important to recognize, Vince, how hard you worked on this project and how hard you worked to get it right. So I really want to thank you. But in general, I think it's a great decision. It's a great day for the community. Thank you.
Commissioner Walker.
Yeah, so this message goes out to the pickleball players. And for anybody who's watching on TV, if you don't think pickleball has become a really big deal in this country, you haven't been paying attention. Last year, we went to go visit my son and soon-to-be daughter-in-law in Grand Rapids. And at the hotel we were staying, they had this pickleball tournament there. There was easily 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, there was a lot of people there. And they were all there to play pickleball. So greatly appreciate the patience of the community as we sorted through this. You know, I think we came to the right conclusion, and I think it was a good alternative that presented by the staff. And again, I'll just say that this is the way it should work, and I'm just proud to be part of this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I also, you know, am thankful that we can now move forward with our pickleball courts. We've had folks in our community that have wanted them for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, and we've been trying to figure it out, and then we came across a stumbling block at Sterling. I'm fine with the location. It fits in, just like I said earlier. It fits. There's already a similar sport occurring there. There's already noise there. There's already lights on at night there. You know, and it's not going to be it's going to be an expensive project too, because there will be some stormwater drainage that we're going to have to deal with. There's other things we're going to have to deal with. But we're being reactive to what the community really desires out of us, and that's what I appreciate. We're not going to make everybody happy. There's going to be some tennis folks that are going to be upset, but for the overall good of the community, I think the choices that we've made here serve the majority of the community. So, okay, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Walker.
Aye.
Commissioner Franny.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Tornga.
Aye.
Commissioner Gao.
Aye.
Mayor Brzezowski.
Aye, that motion passes unanimously. You can clap now. We just have one more quick thing, and then you guys can all leave. But don't all leave right this second, because then we have to wait for you to leave because of the noise.
Mayor, can I just say one thing?
Yes.
I also want to make sure Lainey gets some recognition here as well. She has sat with several of the people in this room, worked out plans. She's done a lot of research on pickleball, on the lights, on the courts, the design, trying not to have to interfere while your players are playing, and to avoid that, putting this path down the middle, the shade structures. So I really think that she deserves a lot of credit in this as well.
Yeah. And you too, Vince. And you too. Okay, we have, well, actually, two final things. We have the proposed agenda for August 17th. I'm sure you all have looked at it. Looks appropriate to me. Everybody okay with it? Can I have a motion, second to approve?
So moved.
Okay, Vice Mayor Tornga, Commissioner Walker, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And then Jennifer wanted to share a piece of informational item with us.
Can I say one thing first? I just wanted to say, I just got a text from the head of the Blue Jay organization in Dunedin, and he said, when are we playing pickleball? So he's listening.
There you go. Okay, you had one quick thing to share, and then we'll be able to get out of here.
Yeah, just really quickly, and this is in regards to the ferry, the Clearwater Ferry. I just want to let you know what I'm up to and going to be up to for the next couple of months along with Vince. So the ferry currently runs Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Vince? Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah.
Right. And it's 5 times a day into our marina. It's run by user fees, those using the ferry. The city of Dunedin does not contribute to operations or maintenance of that ferry at all. So recently, the city of Clearwater entered an agreement with Clearwater Ferry to improve their levels of service between their newly built Sound, and Clearwater Beach. And the purpose, obviously, is to move people back and forth between those two venues as quickly as possible. This was somewhat of a surprise to the city of Dunedin, as the mayor, in her capacity as a member of the Waterborne Transportation Committee of Ford Pinellas, which is our metropolitan planning organization, had been working on more of a multimodal waterborne transportation effort in North Pinellas County. The ferry is a form of transit in North County. So we were hoping to be a party to that agreement to improve the levels of service within the city of Dunedin as far as a ferry goes. To that end, you had actually budgeted, starting in fiscal year 2023, about $55,000 to contribute to the ferry to increase the levels of service and to incorporate more robust routes that would serve the city of Dunedin throughout our busy time and all year long as well. So we sat down with the city of Clearwater, with their city manager and myself and their staff. They wanted to move forward with their agreement with Clearwater Ferry because they wanted to get that service running as quickly as possible as they opened up the Sound. Also, PSTA was at the table as well. Previously, PSTA, the City of Dunedin, and the City of Clearwater were going to submit a grant application for some capital for the ferry and operations, additional ferries and that type of a thing. Clearwater, during the course of that meeting, committed to remaining in the game as far as that grant goes, and that grant was submitted for funding for the ferry. We won't find out until next budget year for the state whether or not that funding, it's $1 million, has been, it's not $1 million, it's more than that?
It's 50% of whatever the service costs.
50% of whatever the service
So
costs.
for 3 years, and we'll know this fall whether we get it, but we won't get any money until next fiscal year.
Right, exactly. So in an effort to continue with the multimodal effort, with the waterborne transportation effort, I did reach out to the city manager of Clearwater, Jennifer Poirier. Talked to her yesterday. She is willing to take her agreement back to the city commission to enter into a tri-party agreement subsequent to our negotiations with Clearwater Ferry for additional service to Dunedin, or conversely, we may wait until, we see what happens with the grant. But that's good news. They're still willing to enter into a tri-party agreement. In the intervening period, though, we've got to get this service up and running by the time we get busy again, and most certainly during spring training, because as you know, those ferries are full. The ferry service did actually just get an appropriation from the state for $1 million, 2 ferries, 49 riders. And they're willing to share those ferries with us. Our marina, I know Vince went out with the ferry staff, and we might need some minor adjustments at some of our dockage, but we can accomplish that larger ferry. And so I just wanted to let you know that you've already budgeted the funds for additional and better levels of service for the ferry, but I am going to be negotiating with the ferry, and we will bring that agreement back to you. That's not something that in and of itself is not a business plan initiative. That negotiation, it changed a little bit from the original intent, which was a tri-party agreement with the grant in place. So typically, you know, if it's a development agreement, I have to ask you to negotiate. I don't, but I want you to know what we're doing with the City of Clearwater.
And if I can just add, the ultimate idea here in the future is that we don't have, individual cities aren't negotiating. The PSTA takes over the service just like they do with the Jolly Trolley, and they do all the negotiation, and we just contribute. But right now, this is where we are until we see if PSTA gets the grant. They have agreed to do that, but they're not going to do that until they get money in hand. And you know, we may have to pay a little bit more in the next year and a half than we would normally, but then it should go back. If we get 50% of the cost for the grant for the operations, the price should go down. But we don't want to say, well, we're not going to have the service until we see about the grant, because we don't even know if we're going to get the grant. But the grant is for the service for both Clearwater and Dunedin. So that's what we're focusing on. If we do get the grant, the service might expand to Thursday through Sunday instead of just Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I see flashing lights out there. I hope it's not that guy. Okay. Anyway, we're good. So,
Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry. May I say one more thing?
Sure.
Because I can tell you if I don't say this, I'm going to feel really bad tomorrow.
What's that?
I want to talk about Vince and Laney as well. Those who was here for that January 4th meeting, yeah, it was a very difficult meeting. It really was, and the community was very passionate about, you know, Sterling Park, and it was a difficult meeting. It was very difficult for Vince, I know, and for staff and for the residents as well. In the interviewing period, there has been very respectful dialogue, and a lot of research has gone on. Vince is a veteran of these things, and he's, you know, been through these types of meetings many, many times. But I will tell you that if there were a younger director, any younger director I'm going to hire in the future, I'll tell them to watch Vince during this situation. Because he remained professional and he continued with the analysis and arrived at a conclusion that supported the community. And so I think that's really, really important, and I'm proud of him, and I'm proud of Laney for what they did, and I'm grateful to the community for giving us the time to do it and to arrive at that conclusion, and most certainly for the City Commission, who did not pressure us as we arrived at our recommendation for all of you. So I'm very grateful. I think it was a good night. Thank you, Mayor.
So on a good note, we are adjourned.